What's going on, everyone? So, Chris Paul's career is absolutely cemented. He's going to go down as one of the greatest point guards ever to play the game. Just a relentless competitor, one of the greatest basketball minds this game has ever seen. Would have been nice to see him at some point go get an NBA championship. There were a couple times where it looked like, hey, maybe this will be his moment. But fortunately, it just wasn't in the cards for him. And there was a thought this past offseason of like, okay, does he go to, a team like the Lakers or, the Nuggets or one of these teams that, maybe he feels best can win an NBA championship. But ultimately, he decided, hey, I'm going to go to the San Antonio Spurs. I'm going to get my money. I mean, he even said, championships out of the cards. I'm going to go try to get the assist record and all that stuff, right? Like, I think he's kind of accepted. I'm going to go down as one of the greatest players ever, one of the greatest players never to win a championship. I'm okay with that. Let me go break some other records if possible. Let me go get this bag. Let me become a mentor. Right? All of these things. And the potential impact that he is more likely to have than not on the Spurs, I think, is massive. Right? What he's going to do for all the young guards, Stephon Castle, Devin Vassell, even Trey Jones, right? Like all these guys that are on the Spurs, and even just for Victor Wembanyama, and like how he's going to help him progress and show like this is how you're supposed to treat your star. This is how you're supposed to get him the basketball. It's how it's gonna feel playing alongside a true point guard. Right? Like again, Chris Paul, his age, his injury history, all those things, still one of the best in the business. His win shares are still some of the best in the business. Like, this is a guy that's going to have a real impact both on and off the court for the Spurs. But this is a real opportunity for Chris Paul in other areas. Obviously, stepping into that mentor role. But with being that comes with, managing players and egos and, helping guide the next wave, the next generation of talent, and trying to help lead a championship, and being an extension of the coach. All of those things also greatly help him potentially being a future coach, right? Chris Paul, the thought process is, at some point he is going to be a head coach in the league, and he is going to be an excellent one with his basketball IQ, the way he sees the game, his competitiveness. Now, there is some questions of like would he be able to be a head coach given his fury and the way that he can be on the competitive side of things? But there's no doubt if he wants to take that step into coaching, he's going to be great. He's going to be brilliant. Greg Popovic, he's going to get to mentor and shape and hope and help Chris Paul, right? Like Chris Paul, you look at just his career and the coaching tree he's gotten to play alongside. A lot of them stem from Pop. Now he gets to actually play with the guy. And look, Pop's what? He's 75, right? Something like that? 75? Yeah, I think he's 75. He's only got so many more years left. Right? He's only got so much left in the tank before he's like, okay, it's time to be done. This is probably his last contract. And so for him, at some point, you need somebody to take up the mantle. You need somebody to kind of step into that role. You need somebody that can kind of be that next great head coach for the Spurs dynasty. I mean, they got Victor Wembanyama. I mean, the goal is to win a championship here, not just one, multiple. What if Chris Paul is, preparing himself for that next step? What if Chris Paul is learning to be the next great Spurs head coach? Right? I mean, again, you look at, he's going to get this time with Pop. Almost feels like kind of an audition in a way. I mean, it was a little odd that Chris Paul signed with the Spurs. I mean, even Spurs fans were like, really? Like, Chris Paul signed with us? Like, everyone was happy. Like, the consensus was, this is great. This is huge. But everyone kind of thought, again, like, he's going to go to the Lakers and go play with his buddy LeBron, or he's going to go, to some contending team and try to win a championship. Maybe he goes back to the Clippers, right? Like, there was this thought process of, like, he's going to go elsewhere, right? Like, and then ultimately he lands with Spurs and people were stoked. What if part of it is like, hey, I want to be a coach. I want to be the next great head coach. I want to be the next great person, right? Like, and this is kind of Chris Paul's opportunity to kind of be an assistant in a lot of ways, right? He's going to step into that mentor role. He's going to kind of be the development coach in a lot of ways, right? He's going to get the opportunity to learn and pick Pop's brain and kind of understand the Spurs culture and stuff like that. Like, even if it isn't for the Spurs, right? Becky Hammond or whoever, right, ends up taking over at some point, right? Like, it's still good for Chris Paul, for his future, if he ever wants to step into coaching, right? You get to learn from Greg Popovic. You get to learn, you got to learn from Steve Kerr for a year. He's played under like Monty Williams, right? D'Antoni, right? Like, you kind of look at all the coaching that he's been under over there. Doc Rivers, right, is another one. Right? He's gotten to get little pieces from a lot of coaches that have had some success. Right? Like Steve Kerr has won multiple championships. Doc Rivers, I'm not a big Doc Rivers guy, but he won a championship. Right? Monty Williams had success. Right? Monty Williams is a guy that, was able to help kind of shape a young Chris Paul, as well as, with Phoenix, right? And he had some success. Now he gets to go and learn from, Greg Popovic. Like, this is good for the future of Coach Paul, right? And like what he can add to his game. And he kind of gets to now, I mean, regardless, even if it's not, an audition or a potential, I'm going to take over for the Spurs or anything like that, but just to be a coach later on down the road, him stepping into that mentor role and learning certain processes and just things that go about it, right? Like, his focus is different. I mean, he's even talked about how his focus is different. He's not, if he was on a team like the Clippers or the Lakers or the Nuggets or whatever, one of these teams that their goal and aspiration this year is to win a championship, right? Like, then I think Chris Paul would be in a very different, like, he'd have different priorities, right? But being on the Spurs and not having the expectation of championship this year, right? Obviously, they want to win. Chris Paul wants to win. They're competitors. Could they make the playoffs or be a play-in team or something? Sure. But I think everyone kind of knows, like, all right, like, they're probably not winning a championship this year. You never know, right? I'm not going to put them in a box, right? Victor was arguably a top 5 or top 15 player last year. Can he move into the top 5, into the top 10 this year? Right? You get the right matchups, you're in the right situation. Like, you never know, right? Like, dominoes kind of fall your way, all of a sudden you're in the finals, right? It happens. I mean, we've seen, like, Atlanta and Dallas make it twice. Like, we've seen some, like, that team that people didn't expect, all of a sudden you look up and it's like, oh, they're in the conference finals? Like, hang on a second, right? But I think this is a great opportunity for Chris Paul. I think he gets to go to a culture, an organization, a system in which he's going to get to learn a lot. He's going to get to learn the ins and outs. He's going to be able to really sit and pick Pop's brain and the organization, all the coaching staff, and and then him just being an extension of the head coach, and him being able to work with the players and be a mentor. And again, it's all the first stages of coaching. It's all the beginning steps to that next level, that next step. Right? And I wouldn't be shocked if Chris Paul ends up ultimately retiring a Spur. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if he sticks around for 2 years or whatever. Like, I think he's obviously this year. I think he re-ups next year. And then after that, I wouldn't be surprised if he retires and is immediately on the Spurs coaching staff. Like, seriously, like, I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up making a jump from player to staff and within like a year's time. Right? I mean, even maybe as soon as next season. right? I think, I think it'll ultimately, like, if Chris Paul can play, I think he'll want to continue to play. If Chris Paul can still be out there on the basketball court, I think he will be, right? Like, so that's why I think it boils down to, like, how does he look and feel this season? But if it goes well, right? Like, I think he comes back. I think he'll be a player again. I think he'll continue to mentor. I think he'll continue to learn, continue to pick Pop's brain. And then I think, he'll retire. He'll retire at 40 or whatever. And then, boom, immediately you'll see him on the coaching staff, as, one of the assistants. Right? And I wouldn't be shocked if at some point he is the Spurs head coach. I mean, he may end up even being, another team's head coach later on down the road. And there is this kind of trend of, like, you look at JJ Redick, right? And him being a head coach for the Lakers. You look at, like, Steve Kerr. Steve Kerr is a guy that went from, basically being a failed GM and commentator to, boom, one of the best coaches in the league. Eric Spoelstra, right, was in the film room, right? Boom, one of the best coaches in the league. Tyronn Lue, like, they're like, you look at some of the best coaches in the league, and we'll see what JJ Redick does. I don't want to lump him into that yet, but you look at, like, the Kerrs, the Lues, the Spoelstras, right? Like, look at those guys, and all of a sudden it's like, there is this sense of, like, going from league to being a head coach. It's had its successes. So it's going to be interesting. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion. I pass the question on to you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? How do you feel? What are your thoughts? Do you think, Chris Paul, do you think that this is an opportunity for him to maybe step up and, potentially be the head coach of the San Antonio Spurs at some point? Maybe be Greg Popovic's predecessor? Do you think, no, like, but this could set up him potentially being a coach elsewhere, right? Not necessarily with the Spurs, right? Spurs, they have other people in line, so probably not, but you never know, right? But again, however you feel, whatever your thoughts are, I'd love to hear it. So let me know down in the comments below. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me a lot. It's me enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. Not subscribe to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one.